All right, fantastic. Let's get started. Thank you all so much for joining. Really appreciate everybody who took time out of their day, including our awesome panelists, whom I will introduce in a minute. I'm Brandon. I am founder and CEO of DevPost. I'm just going to spend less than a minute talking a little bit about myself and DevPost, and then we'll get right into the panel discussion, including questions from our audience. So I'm founder CEO of DevPost. We do one thing. We inspire developers to build through hackathons. We're fortunate to power the majority of hackathons that happen around the globe. There are two parts of our offering, two products. We have a public hackathon product where companies with developer tools use hackathons to get them exposed and used and adopted around the globe to engineers, developers, and others. And then we have a private hackathon product that's about 2 years old, contrasted with devpost.com, which is about 15 years old. And our private hackathon product, which is what today's webinar deals with, is about organizations that have private hackathons inside. And that same product, DevPost for Teams, can also be used for private hackathons with your customers. And the number one use case that we see among our organizations for private hackathons is the all hands hackathon. That's where you get all of your engineers or even invite all of your employees or a combination to have a large hackathon, usually several times a year. And that season is coming up where we have a bunch of these happening at organizations all over the place in October. And so we thought this would be the perfect time to bring on our incredible panelists and to ask them how they structure and promote and do more to ultimately drive a success, including report on the outcomes. And so to that end, I'd like to just briefly introduce our panelists. So we have Janet Carmody, who's the head of culture at Motorola Solutions. We have Tony Hernandez, who's chief architect at JLL Technologies. And we have Trey Spiropoulos, who's manager of communications and organizational effectiveness at Toyota. Thank you all so much for joining us. And I would ask for you to please unmute. It looks like you might be muted. Fantastic. Great. So let me get right into the questions, which is, first of all, if you could just tell us why your organization runs hackathons. What are the goals? Why does it matter to your org? And we'll start with Janet and then go to Tony and then go to Trey.
Well, I think one of the biggest parts of running our big all hands hackathon is sort of to try and bridge startup culture in a Fortune 500 company, sort of bring that to it. And it really, really started to take shape during lockdown and remote work. We are one of the companies that didn't have a mandate to go back to the office. So a lot of our creators and developers are still working remotely. So how do we create a sense of what hackathons used to be and sharing skills across the globe? So that the creative chaos part of it as well, just shot of adrenaline into our teams. It's a big motivating factor.
I love that. Tony.
Yeah, I think very similar for us. I think our hackathons here at JLL started out of JLT to JLL Technologies, which was only created back in 2019. So again, it was very similar, trying to drive more collaboration between our teams who are very global in nature. And I think most recently we've rebranded it to JLL Hackathon. And the reason for that was, again, now trying to bring in more of our business partners into this hackathon world, right? And really being able to drive more collaboration now across just engineering and having different folks with different skills come together, and also as a way for learning new skills. Last year's hackathon was all focused on AI, specifically Gen AI. So again, that was very new for a lot of folks, and it was a great way for people to get firsthand experience of playing with this new technology and really seeing the art of the possible.
Amazing. And we had an earlier question about bringing in, sort of leveraging the entire company. So I'm excited for us to talk more about that. Trey.
Yeah, a lot of similarity between what both Janet and Tony had shared. For us, I think we run hackathons because at Toyota, we've got a commitment to innovation and continuous improvement. We like to call it Kaizen. From an innovation perspective, and Toyota's always been a leader in innovation We've actually led the automotive industry. I believe it's 10 years running now in terms of the most patents granted in the automotive industry. And also one of the leaders just regardless of industry. Last year, we had over 2,600 patents granted to Toyota. Previously, from an innovation perspective, we focused a lot on ideation sessions, which resulted in patents, but it wasn't resulting in us building actual products and services. So we wanted to take that a step further and begin building real prototypes of our next gen products and services, and hence the evolution to hackathons.
Amazing. And actually, speaking of that, I'm not sure a lot of people know this, but Toyota, as you were alluding to, has created and inspired basically modern day software like Kanban, which what we use here, all of these sort of agile Kanban type, just in time and other delivery methods have been so instrumental there. I'll just add one thing that we see from basically every customer. There were 60 inbound requests for a private hackathon product in the year that we decided to build this. And it's really the two things we've heard today. On the one hand, it's innovation. They're trying to drive innovation, and not just the researchers or the designers, but to allow everybody to have opportunity to come up with ideas, set aside time to solve problems for them. So innovation, and the other is collaboration, which is bringing people together, especially in a hybrid or remote world, and just having people enjoy their job more as well. So innovation, collaboration, it's always one or the other or both across every customer that we've talked with. So maybe for those who are watching, a lot of whom are hackathon managers who are thinking like, what is that ultimate output or goal that we're delivering to the business? Where could we do more of? Those are the two areas that we see getting universal buy-in generally across our customers. Another question. This one's actually from the audience. So we asked people if they had any questions when they registered, and several of the questions today will come from them. Which is, how do you begin your hackathon planning process, including any ideating before the event? Let's hear from folks on that. So back to you, Janet.
Well, I think the first thing that we do is set a date. Setting a date is like the forcing factor to making everything happen. And it also, from a organizer's point of view, because it's your own creative constraints that you put on yourself to make sure that you get it done and get it to happen. So we only plan, this is our second year doing the all hands. We gave ourselves 3 months from start to finish, specifically to make it a little bit harder to do. And it forced us to be creative, to think on our feet, and to just get it done. And so that was sort of how we did it. And it was, of course, coming together as a small group of organizers and just divergent thinking, throwing everything, see what sticks to the wall, and not overthinking it, just going.
And, Janet, I've talked to you about your pretty incredible planning there. Any other tips when it comes to beginning that process, or some of those first things that you focus on maybe after that?
Well, I think the one of the most handy things is actually using the platform. So it was sort of already all there, and being able to sort of start there and have a place where everybody can sort of put their ideas as we're organizing behind the scenes was really important. But it's also just sort of going back and looking at some of the smaller hackathons that we did throughout the year that people were organically doing, and taking elements of those and seeing that feedback and seeing what was working there and incorporating it in.
Fantastic. Tony, how about you?
Yeah, I think for us, definitely also starts with setting the date. I think that's definitely the most important thing, especially, for us, it's really important to try to get senior leaders involved. So making sure we can pick a date that's going to work for them is always tricky. So being able to do that far out into the future helps kind of kill those two birds with one stone. And then the other part, as far as ideation goes, I think where we spend a lot of time ideating at the beginning is figuring out what our theme is going to be for this year's hackathon. So there's a lot of ideation that goes into that. Once we have a theme, then it's figuring out what the tracks, and usually we stick to about 3 tracks within the hackathon that again align back to the theme. So that's where we spend a lot of time ideating early on in the planning phase. And then from there, this is going to be our 4th year doing the hackathon. We have a pretty good playbook now that we've put in place that then kind of helps walk us through what are the other key milestones and things that we need to get done. So that's kind of the way we approach it.
Great, Trey.
Thanks. Yes, I think setting a date obviously is a theme. We work with our executives. We're blessed to have a lot of engagement from our executives. So to keep them involved, we've got to work around their demanding schedules. And being a global company, many of our executives are traveling a lot to Japan and other regions, India, Europe, constantly. And so narrowing down that date is the start of it. And then kind of working backwards from there. We ruffle some feathers. We have a large campus with a lot of conference space and meeting rooms, and we reserve them all 12 months in advance. We typically reserve 2 weeks, every room on campus. We're very fortunate that our facilities group allows us to do that, and they usually give us a couple weeks to say, you got to release one, otherwise the pitchforks are coming out for us because other people need rooms. But thanks to my team, shout out to Nikki and Lexi for helping with all that stuff. But typically we also do it in the fall. We found we at one point we went with a summer hackathon, and we found that we're all working adults. A lot of us have families, and it's just tougher to take a step away from work, take a step away from families while you're having summer vacations and holidays. So we reverted back to sticking with the fall. And plus, it doesn't hurt that it's like 40 degrees cooler in Texas in the fall as opposed to the middle of July. But you know, again, it takes a village. We start, typically we do it in October. We take a little break after the event. We resume planning the early part of the new calendar year until the next fall when we host the event. And as far as the ideation process, we typically try to narrow it down to 3 or 4 challenge categories. And we stick to things that are very relevant to the work that Toyota and our organization support, but also not being too prescriptive because we want our team members to let their innovative mindset be showcased. And so lastly, I'll just close that with we've added a new wrinkle this year by introducing an application phase and preliminary judging. In years past, we allowed teams to show up and just show us what you got, give us your best, right? And a lot of it's great, but then you also have stuff that maybe not relevant and might not be financially feasible. There might be another group in global Toyota that's already launched an effort, and we're not going to, be duplicative in that perspective. So by introducing this new kind of preliminary phase, it really helps us focus less about the number of teams that participate and more about the quality of the ideas that they bring to the table. And obviously, DevPost, the team, and the platform plays a pivotal role in helping us succeed with that.
Thank you. Thank you. And I will just say on that front, DevPost, first of all, I'm here to give advice to anybody that's watching, whether you're a customer or not. Brandon at DevPost, please use it. We'll get back to you for sure. I would say some things that we help with, just if I were to be answering this question from our end, the platform saves pretty much everybody at least half the time of any of the organizational stuff. And then our services team has seen this across many organizations. So there's a lot that deal with the planning. And a lot of people watching are not full-time hackathon planners. They're doing this on the side. So everything from what the categories are, what the prizes should be, technical resources, how to structure those, scheduling throughout. All of these things are things that we can give advice to you about. And I'm happy to answer questions from anybody. Trey, earlier you had actually mentioned a little bit about buy-in from executives. So I'd actually like to go back to Janet too and just talk about this executive buy-in for hackathons. How important is executive buy-in for your hackathons, and why does it make a difference, and what are some tips on how to get it?
It's key. It's key. I also am very fortunate to work with probably the most open-minded, ready to go CTO that you could ask for. So very lucky on that end. But getting the executive buy-in across all of our executive vice presidents was huge. So this year Motorola has about 20,000 employees. Between the hackers, the participants, the judges, and the voting, we had 11,000 people participate in our hackathon, which was only possible because Motorola gave the 2 days off. And we had 31 sites all across the world that if you were itching for that in-person experience, you could have it, or you could do it remotely. So it was about catering it to every single type of creator out there. And it was only possible because everybody was on board and everybody got it. They just understood of what was important. We have something called, the technology department has 10% time. So there was a lot of workshops and ideation leading up to it. And that was all supported through our senior leadership teams. And they were the finalist judges, and they were very, very proactive in it. So it was key. It was key to find a way to have everybody participate at our company. And that included 2 days if you wanted to hack, 2 hours if you wanted to be a volunteer judge, and then 20 minutes if you wanted to vote for audience favorite. So we made sure that everybody had a chance to be a part of it, regardless of what your job or skill set was.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, I think executive buy-in is extremely important to the success of any hackathon initiative at a company. So for us, luckily enough, within JLT, our CEO kind of helps also represent the hackathon, within the global CEO staff. So he helps us drive that alignment across all the other business lines, getting all the other CEOs also aligned and supportive of the hackathon. Last year, we were lucky enough to actually have, I think, every member of CEO staff actually be part of our finals judging panel. So that was amazing. It just the stars just aligned. They all just so happened to be together for a board meeting the day of our finals judging for our hackathon, and it was just awesome to have their support there and have them be the judges for the finals. But other things from the different levels of executives, as Janet was calling out, getting them involved as the judges for the final to kind of identify who the finalists are, coaches as well. Something we're doing this year is allowing some of these leaders, senior leaders, to be able to kind of open up and have some office hours to hear people's pitches and give feedback. So I think there's a lot of ways to get execs involved, and that only helps them reinforce back to their teams to say, hey, take the time off, we are giving you the week, this is great, here's why. And I think it really just helps kind of bring it all together.
Amazing. And Trey, you were talked a little bit about it already, and that you had to schedule with these various groups. Any tips on maybe either from your experience or what you might offer to somebody who maybe doesn't yet have that executive buy-in in their organization?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it's almost like a little bit of a cheat code, because our team supports a lot of like the culture and engagement activities. So typically when I'm coming to our executives, they know it's about something like uplifting and positive. I'm not coming to them with like, hey, like we've got an issue, right? And so they're always like, what do you got for us? We'll sign up, right? And so, and they're the ones that actually tasked our team with trying to find a platform for inspiring innovation. And they've been there for us every step of the way for 6 years. And that's including things to support with budget, identifying resources, identifying the challenges. We've gone from an event that was focused on only 3 local organizations to bringing in 3 dozen global Toyota groups. So they're helpful in making those connections with the right leaders globally to identify teams that can come and participate. They serve as judges. And then lastly, post hackathon, right? We don't want it to stop there. They're instrumental in terms of finding pathways to productionalizing these things. And that's critical. And before we move on, I just have to say, I was like flabbergasted at Janet saying 12,000 participants. I thought ours was getting large, and like, no, that's awesome. Good for y'all.
It's the audience vote part that really makes it really important. So having everybody do that was as part, we have a couple different voting strategies. But to piggyback on what Trey was saying, 100%, it's about presenting leadership with a fully formed idea, and this is how it's going to go, and this is what could potentially happen, and to also put the expectation of what their time is required, what time from them is required, because they are, very, very, very busy and in demand. But everybody sees the value of running a hackathon like this and the innovation that can come from it. So if you can create it in depots, write it up, make it a fully formed, this is how it could happen. buy-in's a lot easier to get it that way instead of coming at them with like, I have just an idea. So take it past the idea phase. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm hearing this from everybody here and others, which is yes, have that idea and also get their buy-in early. How can we use this to help your department? How can we get, problems you potentially want solved to be solved? And if you're not in a part of the org that has something to do with innovation, engineering, HR, that kind of thing, perhaps looping in those organizations. I'll just say that one thing we do usually see is that there will be someone or some people at the high engineering level who get it. They've been participating in hackathons, fortunately on DevPost since they were in college, and understand the value of innovation and collaboration. They get it, don't really need convincing. So finding those people as champions, I think is generally a good place to start. So if you're not feeling the buy-in in your part, maybe others as well. Thank you. These are incredible, incredible answers. I want to move. Yes.
Can I kind of extend on that just slightly, just because I think it is such a critical component with the executive buy-in that, again, it's when they feel like we're not just checking the box, so we're not just hosting something to try and innovate, right? Because we have to. When you make it about culture, right? And that, to Jan's point earlier about like creating like a startup like culture, there's more buy-in. And from a culture perspective, we're not afraid to have a little fun too, right? And like we have different activities, Spirit Week type activities. We've had Buddy the Elf show up and he returns every year. And then our executives have, I mean, they even get dressed up. I mean, we've had like holiday characters. We've got Santa Claus one year. We've got Mrs. Claus. And these are literally the heads of the organizations that are doing this. And they're going around passing out swag, or they're giving out 5-hour energies at 1 o'clock in the morning. Execs are bringing in pizzas at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's just really about that organic, they need brain breaks as well. So how can we toss in some fun at just the right moments? Like when you can't get the coding right at 3 a.m. and judging's going to happen 4 hours later and you're stressed to the max. How can we give you that little jolt to help you like reset, refocus, and then deliver? And that all ties into the culture and the buy-in from the execs.
Amazing. And Janet's title is actually head of culture. I do want to move on to this next section. We'll have time for more because I know there's so much to talk about here. We should do a specific webinar based on culture and culture and hackathons for sure. It's one of those two things. It's that innovation and the collaboration / culture. So let's move on to driving participation. This is something that people have asked about. This is something that we see in general, which is how do you create excitement around the hackathon to get and get more people to participate? So, tips, tricks, hacks, things that get people to drive participation. Janet.
Well, I touched on it a little bit about how we sort of created an opportunity for people to, if they were too busy, everybody had at least 20 minutes, right? So everybody could at least participate. But we also had something this year for the people that might not have been comfortable with a hackathon. We definitely had a My First Hackathon workshop that sort of talked about, invited as many people as we could that maybe needed to know the basics and not to assume that people might know exactly what we're talking about. So that was key, I think. But we also put together an idea pool that was about live a month before the hackathon. And it was where anybody from across the company, whether you were sales or finance or whatever, could make a request or put a problem statement or put something that they'd love to see in this idea pool up for grabs. If a team wanted to take it, they would. If they needed an inspiration. And that in itself, outside of the hackathon, turned out to be something really special and really cool to see because we had buy-in from every type of department. People wanted something as small as, I need to have something organize my files this way, an internal process, to people have big asks. Like my customers really want this feature and we don't have that yet. So some of them got picked up, some of them didn't, but they're still there and they're still being commented on and ideated on and like developed. So that was really a fun way to kick everything off.
Amazing. Tony, love to hear from you, including if there's just anything about leveraging communication channels that exist, but however you'd like.
Yeah. So actually similar to first, real quick, just to echo kind of some of the points that Janet made. We also, I think we just actually had our workshop this morning, and I think we have another one scheduled for later tonight for the folks out in Asia Pacific. We call it our Hackathon 101 workshop. So it's literally like intro to just what a hackathon is and how to get involved and just how to be successful. And again, this is not just for engineers, it's for anyone and everyone. And then we also have what we called Pitch Fest. So similar to what you called out, Janet, where we actually did, again, it's a way to tie in and say this is not just for engineers. Had folks from the business coming from every different business line and functional group come in with some very specific customer problems that they're running into today, and then have them actually be the ones to talk about them. One thing we saw when we did this last year for the first time is this was another way to actually, again, get collaboration going, because then it showed folks who, again, weren't engineers, oh, wait, look, that's my colleague up there, right, talking about our problems. And it was a way to kind of have them see other folks that look like them getting involved in the hackathon. And it was a way to kind of boost participation from the non-engineers, and not the engineers. They get it, they love it, they want to go hack, build something cool for a week. And I would say some other communication channels. We work very closely with our communications team here at JLL. So we have a whole internal communications department, and we work very closely with them on being strategic on how we send out internal communications to our employees within the company, both on the business side, the engineering side, and leveraging other platforms like Teams channels, and other ways to kind of get the word out, as well as some of our other like brown bags and internal kind of tech talks that we do as well. So, and the last one I'll leave is going back to executive buy-in. We make sure that at every town hall that we have, all the way from our CEOs down, the hackathon is actually marketed. So we always make sure we get at least 2 minutes or 5 minutes in those town halls to ensure that, again, just put it out there front and center for all of the employees to remind them about the hackathon and how important it is for them to get involved.
Nice. So Trey, you had us all at Buddy the Elf. I don't think there's really, that's all we need to know, but let's hear some more.
Sure. Again, just echoing a lot of what both Jenna and Tony had shared. I think for us, boosting, I'll give this fall, Toyota's launching a pretty massive new program that our teams are very heavily involved in, and so we're mindful of how that impacts the ability to participate. But again, I don't want to keep hammering the culture thing, but we've built a culture. Toyota's typically a pretty conservative company. The event has been more of that startup type culture, that playfulness in terms of the theme and the tone, that people don't want to miss it. It's really a week of that opportunity to build relationships and strengthen culture. So that obviously helps a ton. But then I don't know if this is, I've only hosted hackathons for Toyota. I haven't done it for any other company. So I don't know if it's a general trend or something that is isolated to our organization, but typically we see a very slow ramp up to registration, right? Like we send out the initial comms and it's like, I might sign up, we'll see. And then week 2 goes and we trickle in a few more, and week 3, and then we get to the final week and it's like last year we went from like 20 teams to 98 teams overnight in the final week. And so a lot of it is just constant communication, some playful spamming, guerrilla marketing. We love a QR code. We've got all these little like concrete pillars throughout campus. And to me, it was like, I'm a big movie fan. And I remember years back, I'd walk around town and I'd see these signs that were like saying something about someone named Sarah Marshall. And I was like, and someone doesn't like this Sarah Marshall person. And then I found out it was just a promotion for the movie for getting Sarah Marshall. So a lot of it is elements of that, of like dropping Easter eggs and encouraging people to like, hey, what is this? Like, it doesn't tell me what it is, so I'm going to scan it and find out. And then next thing you know, they're registered to participate. We use Slack. I know there's a lot of great tools out there from a communications perspective. Slack, we also use Microsoft Teams, but Slack has enabled us to be able to be very agile in terms of communications, getting info out there very fast, especially during the week of the event. If we need to pivot, if there's a delay because judging took longer in one room and we're 10 minutes behind, we can push out communications in that format to keep people informed.
Got it. And I'll just add a couple things about DevPost. There's an announcements feature for registrants. That's for those who have already registered, but there's also places where you can put your Slack or your Teams channel and other things like that so that people are aligned there. Two questions from the audience. The first is regarding participation. The first is, what steps do you take to encourage non-technical people or the entire organization to be involved? Some of you have already answered some of this, so I'll just throw back through the Janet and then Tony and then Trey if you want to add anything else that you haven't mentioned so far.
We added this year, so we were a technically focused hackathon up until this year when we decided to open it up, and we have a best in concept now. So we have best in tech, best in concept, audience favorite, that kind of thing. And the best in concept didn't require you to code, but it did require you to pitch a fully formed idea and how you would see it through if you had the proper resources and if you were paired with developers. And it was a high caliber level that we were requiring a 3-minute video and presentation, and it blew our expectations out of the water. It was brilliant because everybody has a good idea at the end of the day. Everybody has ideas that can move our industry forward. And I just wanted to also talk about some of the fun stuff that Tony and Trey talked about. 100% it's about setting that tone and putting out like, hey, this hackathon's going to be none of your normal restraints. You don't have to use our company colors and fonts. You can use your own, and you sort of set that tone with memes and communications. And for example, our CTO and some of our leadership team changed their names to go with the theme. We had a deep sea theme, so it was like Mahesh Shark 3She instead of Sap 3She. So that's where all the communication came from. And so it was sort of setting a tone of like, hey, it's a safe space for everybody, just to sort of like no pressure. Of course, we were going for the high best in tech, but there was a lot of opportunities for people to win in smaller capacities because we had a bunch of smaller awards that were also available just for the most out of box thinking or most creative. So allowing a lot of winners. We had about 120 winners at the end of the day, but we only had about I think 12 main winners. So that was the thing.
Thanks, Tony, and then Trey. Anything to add?
Yeah, let's see. Maybe the one thing I'll add is actually leveraging DevPost. When teams do form right around a project, an idea, we did add in different roles that were non-tech roles, right? And I think it's something, again, in the communication when we talk about the hackathon and registering and trying to make it more inclusive, we definitely highlight those other roles so that folks who are like, well, I'm not an engineer, how am I going to get involved in this hackathon? Understand that there's definitely a role for them to play. So that's something that we've done, and also where DevPost has actually helped us kind of allow it to be more inclusive.
Thanks. Yeah, we have this feature when you create a project where you can say, what are the skills and specialties that we need? Do we need developers? Do we need designers? What are the skills? Is it Rails? Is it Python? Is it R? Is it Figma? And then people can sort of see what matches their specialties and interest, or perhaps reach out to other people and say, hey, this is needed. This team needs somebody, so that could be helpful. Trey, I'd love to hear from you about including the entire org if you want to add anything on that.
Sure. Thanks, Brandon. I think, in a hackathon, you can build an amazing prototype, but, do you know how to market it? Do you know how feasible it is financially? Did you consider the user experience, right? So you need both technical and non-technical talent to be able to really make it effective and make it something that Toyota leadership's like, you know what, we absolutely must do this. So to do that, we need people from all backgrounds. So we encourage the teams as they submit their ideas and create their teams, submit their rosters, to think through those things. We also know that, we've got a lot of people that are very proactive. They're like, I have an idea, I'm going to captain a team, I'm going to assemble that team. And then we have people that are like, well, I just want to come for the fun. I want to come and contribute to an idea, but I don't have that idea. How can I participate? So we've worked with DevPost over the past few years to also introduce kind of a free agent registration where, hey, complete your profile, tell us your skill sets, and then we make that free agent pool available to the team captains so that they can complement their teams based on the gaps that they have, whether it's a marketing need or a design need. And we kind of go from there. And then we also bring in some people just don't have the capacity to spend all week, so they can help in pocket. So we've got a small group, not small group, a small army of what we call subject matter experts, SMEs, that are focused on different disciplines that come in and provide coaching and guidance throughout the week.
Awesome. And I will just say another piece, a huge piece these days that we see in terms of getting, say, business folks, not just engineering, has to do with AI and the requirements of AI. And we're going to get to that in a minute because it's so important these days across all of these topic areas. But just one more question from the audience around driving participation. Again, some of this has been touched on, but if you have anything to add, how do we boost attendance when potential participants, the employees, are already stretched thin? Does anybody have anything to add that they haven't mentioned so far about that? And if so, go for it.
Well, it must be different, it's probably different in every company, but in my experience, what has happened is people want to participate in these events. So they'll make time, and leaders will make time. And I think that's really that's the biggest thing to sort of focus on and to make space for that to happen. And it does get easier. It gets easier every year that you do it. And the truth is, if you don't have to start off with an all hands either. Start off with the small ones, do your proof of concept, show that, yes, look at what came out of it. Look at the excitement and the innovation that came out of this. And you'll start to see that people leaders understand, yeah, this is something I'm going to make time for. I know that maybe we have to rearrange some more deadlines or whatever it might be, or we have to sort of align sprints. But yeah, so it takes, I don't know, I didn't dive into an all hands right away. There definitely was a lot of bug smashes and a lot of smaller hackathons to get people the buzz going in like the year before.
Thank you. Tony or Trey, anything to add about, encouraging employees, or at least getting them when they're really busy doing other stuff with other deadlines?
Yeah, well, I think one thing we've done is we send out a calendar hold. I can't remember if it actually comes out from like the CEO or the CTO, but we actually do send that out as well. So it kind of almost gives the participants permission to like push back on their day-to-day work, because they're like, hey, well, CTO just sent me an invite blocking my calendar out for the entire week, right? So I have time for this. And again, it's definitely something we know is top of mind for a lot of the participants, and it's something we reiterate again in our town halls leading up to the hackathon.
Got it. Any hacks, Trey?
I think just be willing to again have fun, not be so buttoned up and structured. And I think one thing I mentioned, like the QR codes, the guerrilla marketing, but like there's not a set theme, right? Like some people like, oh, this is our theme, right? We're having an ocean theme, right, this year, and we have to stick with that theme, right? We don't have a theme because it allows us to be able to just be random at times. And I think one of the things that we did the first year was it was complete randomness. We found a like cardboard Game of Thrones throne, and we set it up, and everyone wanted to sit in the throne. And then we made a meme out of it that we've used over the years, that like instead of like the Game of Thrones winter is coming, Swarm Hackathon is coming, and we like Photoshop our leader's face and over like the person that's sitting on the throne. Again, it's creating that feel of I can't miss this. It's fun, it's rewarding, and I think as long as we're also being effective post hackathon, it's not just an event, it's not just a week of fun. This stuff happens, right? People see that. People see that their work makes a difference and they want to come back. And I think we have seen that. I mean, even this week, Toyota was able to announce a new feature in one of our vehicles that was the winner of our first ever hackathon. So this is something that you can tangibly see that your work produces an end result that it's not just you seeing it. It's the concept that won and that's being introduced is something that will be in all Toyota vehicles, or not all Toyota, a vehicle in all markets, right? So there's just a massive ability to have an impact in what you do.
I love that. And I really love that story. Maybe that sounds like a great blog post to me about the car. We're hearing similar things here across all of these, which are crucial. So one, getting buy-in and how to get buy-in, including them and then the second piece is communication, mass communication, putting it on the calendars. You're talking about some of the most expensive employees of the company or maybe the entire company. And so, letting people know in advance, getting it on the date, and then of course, highlighting the culture, the fun and the impact. We're hearing that across all of these answers. So I see that we have a couple more sections to get to, and so let's move right into AI, which is, innovation these days equates to AI from what we're seeing across most of our customers. And so, what are you witnessing in your organization? Has leadership bought into AI transformation, or is it kind of a nice to have? Anything that you can share about AI in your organization's goals, Janet?
Well, we saw a lot of hackathons focused on AI last year because it was the new shiny thing, right? And it was really exciting to do that. But then this year I saw a trend of where AI wasn't the main focus, but it was the tools that were being used to develop the ideas. So we've sort of gone into that direction. And yes, we used AI to do some of our metrics and some of our reporting afterwards. We used Gemini to do that, and so that was really exciting. But this year we saw an increase in using AI to get those ideas that they were building across, as opposed to it being the center focus of the project.
Got it. Anybody else want to share about the importance of AI at your organization and any advice on sort of structuring your hackathon with AI? Now Tony.
Yeah, I mean, for us, definitely, it's actually one of the top priorities we have in JLT is AI and enabling not just of our employees, but our solutions to help our clients and our customers be more effective in what they're doing. Last year's actually hackathon was completely around Gen AI, I think, as I said earlier. And this year, it's not really a top focus. I think what we've started seeing now has become more of just the way we work. Our employees are definitely using it more in day out. So for us now, it's just kind of hopefully becoming part of the DNA here at JLL. So it's not something center focus for us. You can see there our theme this year is accelerating one JLL, which we know AI will definitely play a huge part in that. But last year we also talk about tools. We were able to partner with GitHub, and we were able to get all of our developers access to GitHub Copilot for the couple weeks of the hackathon. So that was something, again, just to reinforce the whole point of AI and how AI really helps accelerate. And now this year, we don't need to do that because coming out of that hackathon, everybody loved it, and we were able to make the business case, and now all of our developers have access to GitHub Copilot.
Trey.
Sure, same thing. I mean, for us last year, generative AI was introduced as a challenge category. To Janet's point, it was the shiny new tool and toy, and I think we had out of 63 teams that participated last year, over 60% of those teams participated in that challenge category. So tons of interest in it. And so similarly, we're offering it again this year as a challenge, but it's to Tony's point, it's more part of that day-to-day and that DNA and less of a niche concept. So we're excited to see what the teams can bring forward with it. But that all of this to your point about the question is like, our leadership bought into the transformation as well? Yes, they're the ones that are very adamant that we have this included. And I think we're just continue to be excited by it.
Yeah, and I would echo that. First of all, we're not seeing a decrease in interest at all across the industry in AI. We are seeing that it has moved past the just exploration phase to let's actually use it. We've made some investments. Now it's time to actually use it in our day-to-day. And one of the most clear use cases we see across all hackathons, public and private, for Gen AI is just developer tools. It is one of the things that is the most here now versus just a chat box where you can ask a general question or have it help you with some creative assignment. It is here and now to make developers more productive, and people are using it more. But we haven't seen pretty much any hackathon that hasn't had an AI component, whether it's the tools that are being used or whether it's exploration. But we have somewhat of an insight into this, given that most of the companies who create the LLMs are customers of DevPost. It's going to move beyond that, and it is inevitable and will be inevitable. And we would say that there's no question hackathons are still a great place, for the most important place for AI, because prompt engineering takes experimentation. You have to sit time and experiment. Yes.
Can I add on to that a little bit?
Yeah.
Something I failed to mention was one thing that our leadership asked us to fold into the hackathon a couple of years ago was complementing the hackathon with a series of like tech talks, right? So we would bring in partners to host fireside chats and panels. And I mean, this is like a 54 to 72 hour event. Like people, the teams participating are pressed for time and they're stressed. They want to build their concept. And so we saw, we didn't see as much interest in attending these panels and fireside chats as they were hosted in the middle of the event. It was distracting, right? We almost had to bribe them to come to the location that they were hosted and take a break from coding. So we took a different approach 2 years ago and found a lot more success. And so we actually started it again this week, where we bring our partners in and they host a 60-minute virtual tech talk. So today we had one of our partners lead a talk about one of the generative AI tools, and we auto record them, we transcribe them, we provide access because teams are coming over from different regions of the world. They can't join live at 10 a.m. Dallas time or 4 p.m. Dallas time, so they can watch it on demand. We're not as concerned about, hey, what was our number of people that dialed in, right? As opposed to, let's make sure that this content is available to everyone. And so they have some instructions from these like hyperscale companies and our other partners on what are those like current hot tools and new coding languages, LLMs that they could have access to that could really take their concept to the next level.
Great. Yeah. And just to put a bow on the AI thing, across our entire customer base, both public and private, we have seen very little that doesn't touch AI, but it has moved from the what the heck is this thing to let's make sure that we're delivering it, using it, experimenting with it, finding additional business use cases, and saving time, saving money, delighting our customers, and ensuring that we don't miss the future. Great. Let's move into the very last section, which is measuring the results and reporting on the outcomes. Janet, how do you measure the success, the return on investment for your hackathons, and any tips on delivering that?
Well, Tony and Trey also talked to this about early. I mean, can you really measure? Some of it's intangible about the experience and sort of the creative ideas that come out and the connection. So you can't lose. Like a hackathon, whether you have 5 people or 500 people, it always produces excitement and fun, and it's just getting together to geek out. So that sort of intangible measurement, it cannot be understated. Yeah. Anyway, no, I think for the return of investment in sort of our products and all that kind of stuff, yeah, we have ongoing for the rest of the year. We actually have a hack on space in DevPost where teams can continue on with their projects and have oversight by some of our mentors, by some of our senior leadership teams, and get further resources. And we have check-ins and all that kind of stuff. And yes, things go right into some things go right into the patent process, and some things need a little bit more work. But we've been touching on all of them. We had 298 submissions. We had 15 hours of video, and we created sort of like a Netflix website where you can go as an employee and search that way and watch all the 3-minute submissions and comment on them and like them. And what happened was, organically, by viewing them and liking them, they were being tagged to product people. They were being tagged here and going there. And so we've relied heavily on like the full force of the company to make sure that things were going in the right direction.
Excellent. Tony?
Yeah, I think maybe going back to the culture part of this, right? It is hard, as Janet called out, to kind of really put a concrete, like, what's the business impact and the business outcome that this is driving. But I think what we look at maybe is when we try to measure the hackathon is some of the input metrics that, again, probably align with the culture that we're trying to create, right, by having hackathons. So we do look at some measures around how many folks registered, right? And now, because we do want it to be more collaborative, we're looking at both how many engineers are registering versus how many folks from the business are registering. So definitely we're measuring those, again, with the goal being that, hey, if this is really about having it be more of a culture of innovation and bringing folks together, well, the more folks we have register, the better, right? It's a good indicator that, hey, folks are kind of excited about this, the word's getting out, more and more folks are getting involved. The number of projects that actually get demoed at the end of the week is another metric that we look at. And now, because we've been doing this for 3 years, I think a new metric we're starting to look at is how many of the projects actually go to production. So I think from our very first hackathon we had one project go. I think the next year, same thing. I think from last year, I think we've already had, I think, about a handful of projects that were last year actually in production now. So we're starting to see that kind of curve grow more exponentially, which is exciting to see. So that's the new metric that we're starting to look at.
Love that. And Trey, you mentioned already with the automobile, but anything else?
I think similarly to both, again, it's some of it's intangible. We want to caution ourselves on being too focused on how many ideas were approved and were productionalized, right? The new feature in the vehicle that was announced this week, that's been 6 years in the making, right? It's a very complex. The automotive industry especially is very complex. I mean, we're working with different suppliers, with different partners, with different regions that are in charge of certain responsibilities. So, it takes a village. I think that's one of the main successes, though, is the collaboration that it took to bring this, right? Our little team in Plano, Texas, was able to influence something and work with people all across the globe to make this happen. And what's crazy about it is how similar the concept from 2019 is to the productionalized version. But again, it's a little bit of balance of both the final end product, the end result, how many things were productionalized compared to bringing together, collaborating, and the culture.
Got it. So I'm a believer in being able to report on the outcomes of hackathons. I will say our product does a decent job. We're working on additional features here. So the product shows you participants and shows you registrants. And of course, you can see all of the projects and what people learned and what they did. But I think that there are other things. I was just looking at a stat yesterday that nearly 100% of an organization's participants learned something new, and nearly 100% of them use that new thing in their day-to-day. I think that's something that executives really appreciate for this kind of an investment. That's tremendous. I also think collaboration. Did you work with somebody new? Did you work closely with somebody new that you hadn't before? Could be a good question. Did you have fun? We're hearing a lot about fun and culture. How much fun did you have? And then this production, which is the projects themselves. Did they go on to production? But also maybe they didn't. Maybe you failed, and as a result of that, you learned something new and then built something else that went on to production. So that's what's so cool about this. So I think we as an organization and a product could do more in our product to sort of show that. And we have some stuff coming for that, but I love everybody's participation. I just want to say we are pretty much done here with the questions. We're going to end with one question from the audience that came in, which was, how can I maximize my chances of winning in a hackathon? So I'm happy to hear that we have people that are participants, not just organizers, but let's hear it from you. Judging criteria, the do's and don'ts of what does a great project have? Janet, would love to hear from you.
Well, I mean, from an organizer's point of view, my big thing is, hey, if there's things that are put in place to help you with your hackathon, whether it be preliminary workshops or social gathering, in preparation before, go to them, read them. Those are the people that will be judging you. Those are you read the room, I guess, be part of the idea pool, be part of the chat room. be part of the, so it's about, it's, if you really want to win, it's about engagement and it's about diversity of teams, right? It is about finding those diverse skills, and those teams are the ones that see the most success, is people with all sorts of different skill sets. And don't be shy about using like the people directory or using the function to reach out, and just ask questions beforehand. That's kind of it. Yeah. And and presentation is key. I think Tony talked about having product marketers and designers on your team. Clutch. Because you can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't explain it, it's not going to do anything for you.
Tony.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's usually my number one feedback is like whatever you come up with your project, I'm sure it's going to be awesome, but you're usually in these hackathon type of setups, you're only going to have maybe 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes, 10 minutes max to really get that idea across. So those communication skills, how you present the idea, I think the only additional thing I would say is the problem that you're going after. I think with hackathon, we always get very caught up in the solution and the thing you're hacking on. But I think tying it back to a big customer problem and showing how what you hacked on is like the hero to that problem for your customer. Again, it just goes back to that story and really being able to get that across in a few minutes.
Trey.
Well, they stole all my good answers. I'll say that. And I don't want to be repetitive. I think the diversity is huge, though. I mean, we actually had a component for a few years where you got bonus points added to your project and your pitch if your team roster was made up of people from other regions or other organizations. So encouraging people to reach across the aisle and learn from one another. And I think that's big, like especially for us at Toyota, right? You've got people participating from all over the world. The way that we build our vehicles for, let's say, the Asian market is different than how we build them in North America. We have customers that drive, massive trucks and SUVs here where you don't see that in many other regions of the world. So when you're thinking through an idea and you're like, I'm going to build this, right? Does it really scale? Are you solving, to Tony's point, are you solving a problem for someone in a different market? You might not be. So by diversifying your teams, you're able to kind of build in some of their perspective as well that can help elevate you and show that you're thinking through things in a different way when these executives are reviewing your ideas.
Amazing. I'm going to wrap this up by giving my answer to that, which is one, look at the judging criteria. They're in DevPost. They're there. The judges are literally looking at this criteria, creativity, originality, etc., and they are giving you a 1 to 5 on that. So put yourself in their shoes and say, am I optimizing for the judging criteria? And then the second, when it comes to the presentation, I believe we're sharing an old article, but it's still that we wrote, but it still holds true, which is how to give a great presentation. And I'll just say, first, set the scene. What's the problem that you tried to solve? What's that pain? Outline that in the beginning of your DevPost project or your verbal presentation. Second, show the solution. They don't want to just hear you talk about it. They want to see it in action if any kind of building is required, and just show how you did it. And then the last one is sell the dream, which is what's next for this project? How can this help us in the future? That sort of thing. So that is our advice on how to create a great project, a winning project. And this has been our advice on how to craft the best all hands hackathons in the world with the best panelists in the world. Thank you so much, Janet, Tony, Trey, and everybody else who joined. I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Tony and Janet.
Thank you.
Have a great
Cool.
day.
We will post this online. Follow us on LinkedIn. Reach out to any of us on LinkedIn or my email, brandon@devpost.com. Thanks again.